Hello, everyone. It's been a while since we've done an episode of this. This is State of Science Fiction episode 10, and I am here with Bert-Oliver Boehmer. How you doing?
I'm good, Britton. How are you?
I'm doing well. Welcome to the show. I'm glad we managed to get this together.
Thank you for having me. Much appreciated.
Yeah, I enjoyed our. I had you on for my podcast, and I enjoyed our conversation a lot. I'm like, well, I gotta get you on for State of Science Fiction, and also Olivia's like, I think this guy would do well for State of Science Fiction. I'm like, that sounds like a good idea. And you also write science fiction as well.
I do. Yeah, I'm contributing just a little bit to the current state of science fiction. Of course, I'm very opinionated about what has been, about where we are, where we could be going. So, yeah, looking forward to this.
Yeah, that's a lot. I've had a couple people on who've been on the show, and they're like, "Do I need to know anything?" I'm like, "Well, do you have opinions about science fiction?" And they'll go, "Yeah." And I'm like, "All right, then we should be good." So this is gonna be a bit more structured. My podcast. I mean, I try to be as free flowing as possible, but I do have questions to keep us going here. So, like I
Perfect.
said, more structured. So yeah. But how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Currently working on a serialized web novel, which got me into a different rhythm than what I'm used to with writing the more traditional novels. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a different pace, but I enjoy it. It's constant creativity. So I'm doing well. Never a dull day.
Sounds like it. Well, I'm always down to talk about science fiction. It's in definitely my top three favorite genres out there. So again, just glad we could get this together. And like I said, it's been a minute since I've done this last, so glad we're here. So I guess I shouldn't ramble on for too much longer. I guess we should get into it before too much hassle. My number one question, my first question here is, what, in your opinion, makes a great science fiction story?
Great and a little bit open-ended, of course, question. What makes a great science
That's why I
fiction
picked it.
story? I think it's really um the question is almost the same with what makes a great story, right? So to
Mm-hmm.
me, science fiction is more a setting that enables certain possibilities that
Mm.
you might not have in a different genre, because you can bring in settings that you typically don't have access to, right? You can have a detective story set on a different planet, right? It's still in its core, it can be a detective story, but the setting is completely different. You can have mystery in space. You can have romance on a space cruiser. You can basically have whatever makes a story great within the science fiction setting. So I think the answer to your question is really what makes a story great.
Mm-hmm.
And that, of course, it's a big question. Um, in my opinion, what makes it a great science fiction story, if you get all the other things right, if you have a great setup, a great inciting incident, if you have a great story structure, whatever you follow, from like classic 3 act or a more modern structured way to present the story you really want to tell, if you have compelling characters, the science fiction part, what it gives to you is the additional freedom to explore, let's say, ethical questions of morality, questions of faith, of self determination, transhumanism. You can explore those with very focused technologies that you kind of created to be a vehicle of the story. You can narrow down on some ethical dilemma and create a monstrous technology that has been developed that encapsulates this dilemma really
Mm-hmm.
well, and you have the people in the story that create the technology, that fight for it. You have the people that fight against it. So you can really take a today problem, a very general human problem, take it to the stars, take it uh, to a completely different time frame, and disguise it a little bit sometimes. Many times that happens in science fiction when the question comes up, oh, why is this so woke, or why is this so why does it ask so many uncomfortable questions? When did science fiction take this turn? And the answer is usually, well, science fiction was always like that. There
I was, I was gonna say
many,
I don't want to be that like
right?
obnoxious dude on Twitter who says like, oh, it's always been there, but yeah, it's always been there.
Yes. Yeah, it really has. And science fiction authors
Like, what do you
always
think that War
made
of the Worlds
use
was
of that.
about?
Yeah. They take what they see, they transform it into a different place and time, and many times overemphasize the point they're trying to make, or they're very subtle about it and they
Mm,
weave it into the narrative. And
mm-hmm.
sometimes the very space opera showdown is and it seems like a battle between good and evil, and it's all very black and white and very easy to understand. But many times there are underlying threats that unravel if you watch it or read it for the second or third time, or sometimes when you watched it when you were 8 and all you saw was a big adventure with space pirates, and then you watch it again, a little bit later in life, and you realize, wow, there's actually more to it than I remember. So I think that makes great science fiction when all this comes together in the right way.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I ask what makes it a specific science fiction, or what makes it like specifically good science fiction stories, is because I think like science fiction, like with many other genres, however you might think of that, I think there are specific things that make science fiction what it is, kind of the same way I think there's specific things that make fantasy what it is,
Right. Right.
or crime books, because I like a lot of crime books. um, um, But yeah, I agree. I do think that science fiction is a really good avenue to take these kind of philosophical, spiritual, scientific ideas, or ideas about it's. I mean, science fiction is often called the literature of ideas. So there you go.
Yeah, I think I mean, every good story ultimately has some idea kernel, right? If it's fictional, if you tell the story of what really happened, then of course you're in a different genre. If you're very good at describing real world events, that's also a talent, but that's not science fiction. The fiction part is really strong, so you make the story suit your message, the underlying idea, and it can be a very localized. I don't want to say small idea because that sounds like I'm judging it. I'm not. You can take a very localized setting of events or focus on just a few characters and their relationships in a futuristic or somehow science fiction or techie setting, but all this falls in the background and you really focus on the characters in the setting. I think where it's best, and there's so many subgenres, so it's I think we probably have to narrow it down to a couple of those. If you're into military sci-fi, then the being with a crew of of soldiers or special forces in some sort of future setting, that's what you want, and it's sometimes very episodic. So it's like watching a Star Trek episode where you have the same ship, the same crew going on different missions. So
Yeah.
it's a pattern. You buy into the crew, and then you want the crew to see different things. So military sci-fi is very much like that. Then there are other subgenres that are completely different. If you go more into metaphysical stories, then you take that idea, and it's almost like the idea is the character, and the people in the story, or the aliens in the story, or whoever are the entities in the stories, they're just there to tell about that idea. So some Asimov stuff as I remembered it from reading it when I was a teenager, it felt to me like this. It felt to me almost like the characters are disposable, but there is the big idea the author wants to get across.
Yeah, I always
So
thought Asimov was at his best if going into like specific authors, kind of when he would do like short stories or like what would they call it, like the fix-up novel, kind of like I, Robot. I really like the original I, Robot book,
right, yeah, the robot stories.
which are very episodic.
There's crime in there as well. So for
That's
you,
true,
it was
yeah.
a great genre overlap.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, he's it's interesting how I mean, I think science fiction is unique because you could kind of just carry the idea. The idea can carry the story, really. Not necessarily. I mean, I don't. You can have great characters in science fiction. It's definitely happened. I mean, everyone remembers Star Trek,
yeah.
or
Both are
because of the
possible,
characters. But I don't always read like a Arthur C. Clarke or a or Heinlein always for the characters. Though I think Heinlein had more characterization than some of his other contemporaries.
Oh yeah, he certainly did. In the scale is really fluent from hardcore high concept, where the idea overrules everything and the characters almost feel expendable, to basically it's all characterization and it just happens to happen on a spaceship. But you get the feeling if this would have been a 19th century freighter, you could weave the same story around that. You don't necessarily need the science fiction elements. So I personally like if the author makes use of the science fiction setting to, well, almost have it be worthwhile to be in the science fiction genre.
Yeah, it's definitely a how do I describe it? It's definitely I often like to call it the genre of discovery because it's it's very much about well, it's about the future for one, that usually, but
Usually, yes.
I do remember something that Alan Moore once said in an interview. Again, I don't know how familiar you are with comics. I know you've mentioned in our last chat that you like manga, but Alan Moore says like when you write about the future, you're often more than not writing about the present. It's just that the future kind of gives you more wiggle room to move. Paraphrasing here, by the way.
Yeah. No, that's precisely it. This is, and I think this is when science fiction is well done and potentially at its best, when it really uses this enormous canvas that it gives you, and it's not like if we write in a more realistic genre that we live on a small planet. No, not at all. It's a big world. It has become smaller through our ability to travel it extensively, but it's still it's a large planet, lots of people, lots of different cultures. So there is a rich tapestry that we can put really interesting stories onto. But I think that science fiction really enables to have the sky's the limit, not with science fiction, right? So you can go anywhere, anytime, and you can also, and I personally like if you go far in the future because, well, I'm biased. That's what I'm doing. It's of course interesting to have science fiction. Some of the science fiction we read or consumed we've overtaken it, right? It's the year 2025. What kind of a science fiction date is that?
Man.
Right?
I was thinking the other day, a game I really enjoy is Call of Duty Black Ops 2, which takes place in 2025, and we're here.
Yeah. That's right.
I am a little disappointed we don't have the cool future technology in that game, but it's so weird now. I'm like, we're in 2025.
Not that we know of, but I don't think we have it. No.
Sadly, no.
Yeah, a lot of you find a lot of these titles, video games, books, movies, of course, that are set in the far future of 2012, and like, well, we're really past this. I recently replayed some of the Deus Ex games, and they're set between 26 and 29, I believe. So you look at it, 26, yeah, it still is the future, but It's very close, and we're not quite there where they are. Of course, they had some terrible elements of society, so we can be glad that we don't have this yet. But there were, of course, some really cool technologies, and yeah, we're not there. We're very optimistic, I think. Just science fiction writers in
Yeah,
general,
I mean,
even dystopian writers, are at heart optimistic.
yeah, I mean, most science fiction's like, well, we made it this far.
Exactly. Yeah. The year 3000, everything is terrible, but hey, we made it for another 1,000 years, so that's not that bad.
Or you know how 1984 is not dated. I don't want to say that because it makes it sound like I'm criticizing the book, but we're long past 1984 though.
Yes. Yep.
um, but yeah, it's interesting how that works. So, but yeah, I think I think science fiction is very much that genre of discovery. Or at least I think the best kind of science fiction is about that. What I've noticed anyway.
Yeah, you can. I mean, it's building in the discovery component is really, I think, relatively easy to do in this genre, because you can make up the things to be discovered. You can set the sides of the protagonist to whatever whatever quest they're following. Right? Are they saving someone or something? Do they try to find again something that was lost? Many science fiction stories are based on, oh, there was a precursor culture maybe, and where we're trying to find what to them are ancient artifact, but the technology is so advanced, everybody wants it. So you can construe very interesting storylines that take care both of history and a little bit of mythology, but it's still all set in the future. And the discovery then is you can take the reader along to discover this new universe that you created. And there's always the of course the lure for the writer to say, oh my gosh, I have all this world building, I have so much, I need to pack it all into page one of the book. And sometimes writers do this, and then it's like, oh my god, this is quite a lot to take in. So I think instead we should take the discovery very literal. As you said, it's the genre of discovery. You take the reader along for the ride and have them discover this new world from the perspective of the protagonist, who might also be new to this world. They go to a new planet, and it's not only new to the reader, it's new to the protagonist as well. So they both discover the same things at the same time. And this gives a lot of I think can give a very close bond between the reader and the protagonist. And that, of course, is something that you want from a book, consciously or not, that you're really invested in what's happening and what's happening to the person you're reading about.
Yeah, it's definitely I also think, and this is kind of going to bleed a little bit into my second question, so I'll try and dance around it as much as possible. But I kind of think of science fiction as well as kind of like a creating a mythology of what the future could look like in a sense.
Yes.
And I think science fiction is a very mythic genre. It does use a lot of. I remember. I don't know if you've read the Christopher Rocchio books. I have not personally myself, but Christopher Rocchio mentioned that he finds that science fiction and fantasy aren't necessarily that different. It's just approach is kind of what they're paraphrasing again, but that's kind of the gist of what he has said in the past.
I think in terms of the structure of the worlds you build in mythology can, and ideally, because I personally love it, so I make a lot of use of mythology. You can construct it in a way, you pick a starting point for your story, that so we're here, the starting point is in the future, and then of course you start telling your story from there. But you also have this gap that you can fill with the further it goes from this point in the future you picked, the more mythological it becomes, and you can shroud the our current time into mythology, which sometimes can be really cool to read about how history has distorted events that we're currently going through and how they're seen and read in the future. Or you leave Earth and everything we know completely behind, and go to that galaxy a long time ago, far, far away. You can really deal with different time frames. So again, it's like the canvas is enormous.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I do think that there is a big canvas in science fiction for sure that you can use. There's also a lot of toys you can use too, so that's
Oh,
always fun.
absolutely. Oh, talking about toys, and another remark, if you allow, to the last, what you said about the difference between fantasy and
Mm-hmm.
science fiction, right? So, many times you ask, so what do you think is the difference? Many opinions out there. I think in terms of structuring world building, similar. This is usually why they're grouped together as genres. I find the key difference is really where does the wonder come from? Where does the magic come from? And I find that if something happens in fantasy that's magical, the
Mm-hmm.
source is magic. The invisibility cloak is fueled by magic.
I see
And
what you did there. The
yeah,
little
if
Clark's
if you
third
would have
law.
that in
Little
science fiction, right? You have a cloaking device, you
uh
have a piece of technology, and you have some explanation around. Well, maybe you don't. In Star Wars, you have the hyperdrive.
mm-hmm.
It's never explained how it works. It just works. You can travel really fast, and there you
Mm-hmm.
go. You can explain it or you don't, but it's technology versus magic. That to me is the main differentiator.
Yeah, I've heard a couple of other people say that as well when I've talked about the differences between science fiction and fantasy. Um, for sure. But I guess that actually leads me to my second question, which is, I guess, the most personal one. The other one was pretty personal. But anyway, what do you personally find so compelling about science fiction as a genre?
It's a good question. When you
I
said
hope that's not. I
earlier,
hope that's not like a repeat of the first one, but like I think that it's more
no,
of
no,
like
I,
a.
I I think it is actually quite different. And when you mentioned earlier that science fiction is in your top three of genres, and
Mm,
I just thought, gosh, science fiction, it ranks so high for me. I'm not even sure what my number three, if there's room for a number three. So since pretty much early childhood, I discovered sci-fi, and then I realized this is it for me. This is the
mm-hmm,
this is the form of entertainment I really like. And yes, I watch other movies. I consume other things. If it's pop culture, I think I sort of grew up on a fairly broad diet. But if it
mm,
was like some investment of time involved, like if it was playing a game, following a series, reading novels, then
mm-hmm.
I would always fall back as the number one two choice to science fiction. And what fascinates, well, I got through it, into it through the visual.
Mm,
A movie got me,
mm-hmm.
like so many people from my generation will tell you. Oh, my dad took me to the movie theater. We watched Star Wars, and I was blown away. I was
Mm-hmm.
just blown away. I thought this is the best thing I will ever see. Well, fortunately, I didn't peak at 9, but it was still the image of the Star Destroyer coming in, flying over, accompanied with the great score. It was just so fantastic. So I really started with the visual impression of, oh, this is what science fiction can be. Wow. I didn't grow up in a science fiction household. My
Mm,
my parents had lots of different interests, and I guess science fiction just never really made it onto their list, and they didn't actively suppress it as something stupid or something you should stay away from. No, they just weren't interested. So it was not a thing that I grew up with as a really young child. But then watching Star Wars was really, wow, I want more of this. And then I started digging for all kinds of novels I could find, and I read all the classics, so what is now considered the classics, back then relatively new novels, and which ages me a little bit. I just realized, but hey, no hair and don't look that young anymore anyway. So yeah, these things I just I was always fascinated with the visual first, and it's still how I write today. I create the scene in my head. I basically see it as a movie scene, and I listen to the dialogue of my own characters, and then I write it down. So the act of writing is very much I have the thing in my mind, and then I write what I saw and I write what I heard. That is my writing process. So I still stuck with I have to visualize it somehow, and then when I went the next step into reading novels, in novels, of course, you have the added benefit of you can see inside the character's head, so you have a much closer relationship to how does someone in this situation react to that magic, the science fiction magic, and how do they deal with it, or how does it affect them, or maybe they have it in their body, maybe they're augmented, maybe they're a cyborg. The possibilities, as we said, are endless.
Yeah.
And this is really the interplay of these different forces really glued me to the genre and never really let me go.
That's interesting. I mean, I've said this a couple times in other episodes of this show, but I often am. Generally, what draws me so much to science fiction as a genre is I'm really fascinated with the future and what we're going to do, in the future, where we're going to go. I wouldn't say I'm like a futurologist or like a transhumanist or anything like that,
Right.
but I am always been fascinated with like the future. Like, a lot of people are kind of like nervous about AI, and I'm really fascinated. We kind of talked about this last time we spoke. I'm fascinated with what AI is. I mean, I don't want to rehash this again, but technically it's not AI, but I'm still really interested.
And I know what you mean. Yeah.
But I don't want to rehash that. But it is. I'm really fascinated by the future, and I mean, one could argue we're kind of there already in a sense.
The question, where are we going, right? Of course, is an age-old. Where did we come from? Why are we here? Where we're going? So it's one of the big three questions. Where are we going? Where is all this going? I think it's a very legitimate question, very human question, has probably been asked by people since the dawn of time. And it's one of the big ones, and that might also be an explanation why the genre, in my view, is continuously successful. Of course, there are commercial ups and downs about sci-fi, and the podcast is called the state of science fiction. So I might touch on that a little bit, but I don't want to steal your thunder there. So we asked this question: where is this going? What's happening next? And I think again, the science fiction is in a great position to not deliver answers, really. I think it's too big of a question that anyone could claim, well, I got the answer, I got it figured out. But it gives possibilities, it gives options that we could see as logical. We see the threats that are unraveling right now, and we could see how this in a lot, we talked about the closed science fiction settings. We can see maybe what happens in 2030, 40, 50. We have a gut feeling of what could happen there. If we go further out, of course, the threat unravels so far that the possibilities are huge, and then it's up to the creator of science fiction to pick one of those threads and say, well, I think this is most likely, or this is one we should follow. Or many times science fiction honestly is about we should really not do this because here are the terrible consequences of it.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of science fiction that's like, don't do this, like don't do this particular
It's
thing.
not a blueprint. Many times it is a warning. Yes.
But yeah, I think the science fiction that most speaks to me that isn't like, like how would this political thing work? That's why I like Moon is a Harsh Mistress a lot, because it's like, what would a libertarian revolution look like? But anyway, but yeah, it's like where are we going to be in the future? Like, how are we going to react to the future? And we're kind of getting a sense of that right now, because people are just all over the place going like, oh, what are we gonna do? And again, this is kind of bleed over into another question, so I'm gonna try and keep this as vague as possible. But I find that science fiction is kind of in a weird spot right now, in a strange way, because like a lot of science fiction is coming true. A lot of the stuff that people like Asimov and Heinlein, and well, more like Asimov and Clarke than I don't know. Well, I need to read more Heinlein before I make a good generalization on how right he got
Some of it, certainly. Some of the tendencies are surfacing, resurfacing, however you want to read it. But yes.
But yeah, I think it's interesting that like we're here, and I think there are still places for science fiction to go for sure. But it's kind of like, what are we gonna do now that the future is coming? It's here.
Now that the future's here,
Yeah.
that we've reached the point of future.
It almost feels like a slogan at this point.
You can certainly make one. Put a .com on it, and so I think it's an interesting observation. Of course, we have tried to some extent, of course, always fail to learn from history, right? We try to find out what really happened, and then we try to learn to just to see certain patterns and either repeat them if they were good, or avoid them if they were bad, if they had bad outcomes. To add what's about the history of prediction, the history of science fiction?
Mm-hmm.
Take the works and see what motivated those authors back when they wrote it in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. What triggered their prediction? How much of it came true, or if it was truly terrible? What prevented it from becoming reality? And treat that like we would treat the science of history, basically. That's an interesting idea.
Yeah, it's I guess there is kind of a thing where like science fiction is kind of a history in a weird way, because we're speculating on where history could go. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, science fiction always has history built in, right? So when you pick that future date, and then you usually you have to weave in a certain background information. No book, no story has a proper beginning and ending. There's always things that happen until where your story starts, and there are things that happen after. So it doesn't exist in a void. So you have to take the events that led up to this into account, and many science fiction stories start sometimes right after some cataclysmic event. There was a revolution, there was a coup, there was a civil war, there was a war against aliens, and so a lot of terrible things, or a lot of groundbreaking action has happened outside the scope, and you weave this into your story. So many times when you create a world, and that's the same for fantasy too, not only do you create the world forward, you also create the world backwards.
It's kind of funny you mentioned cataclysmic event. Bit of a non sequitur, but kind of in the subject still. So indulge me if you'll indulge me a little
Oh,
bit.
let's go all
I'm
the way to
actually,
the French, whatever fits
um,
the theme, even if barely.
yeah, I'm actually reading. It's my first Star Wars book I've read in a while. It's the first of the High
Okay.
Republic books I've read, but I'm reading Light of the Jedi right now.
All right.
Um, which is basically about the Jedi kind of trying to figure out what's going on because there's this like big cataclysmic event, kind of like a 9/11 kind of situation.
Mhm.
And they're trying to figure out who did it, and it's kind of and it's kind of and it's also before like the movies, so this is like takes place like years ago, back when the Jedi were more in their prime, and like this is what they're supposed to
Right.
be doing, when a Sith Lord isn't manipulating everything.
Right. The good old times when they
Yeah,
could focus on their core mission. Yeah.
yeah. And like it's a good book so far. I'm enjoying it, but there are sometimes I'm kind of like, man, this is a little too good to be true, I think. But like I do get that like it's a choice because this is taking place um when things were going well, I'll say.
Mhm. Yeah. And that is, yeah, this is the time period before, um, the core Star Wars universe. I think it's a great example for many of the things we so far talked about, where when you first introduced to that fictional world, you feel there's still talk about the old republic,
Mm,
and there is still the Senate still exists, but you also very quickly figure out, now this is not a functioning democracy at all. They just have these old remnants of a democracy that's still, so it can, whatever happened there, it's not like this has been a galactic empire for thousands of years.
mm-hmm,
This has been a galactic empire that was formed very recently. And
mm-hmm,
then it all falls into place. Then it makes sense why there is an active rebellion that is growing, that's pretty big, because
mm-hmm,
it's not like people have lived under an emperor for hundreds of years and that's just the norm.
mm-hmm.
No, many people still remember how it was when the republic was around. So
Yeah.
that gives this immediate, it gives more, it legitimizes what's happening with the rebellion,
It's
and
like,
it
this
immediately
sucks.
clicks.
Things were so much better when the Republic was a thing,
Yeah,
uh
exactly right.
which that's kind of the point of the High Republic. Like, look how good things used to be. Look at this beautiful thing that Palpatine destroyed because he's a jerk. um Though it's kind of interesting with Star Wars. I mean, yes, it is science fiction, but it's also kind of like it's a very archetypal fantasy story as well, which I think is it's always kind of fascinating with with Star Wars and the conversation of science fiction. I
It
think.
it very, in well, back then, almost revolutionary
Oh
way,
yeah. Mhm.
melted these things for a really large audience.
Mhm.
And yeah, and that's almost a, what's the state of science fiction question. Maybe we dive into this too early, but I think that, and it also goes along with your first question, what makes a great science fiction story. Science fiction, it had its ups and downs, and
Mhm.
sometimes people say, oh, science fiction is out, and then, oh, science fiction is hot, it's in, it's out. I think that there's always a broad appreciation for the genre.
Mhm.
It's just a question of how fresh the stories are and what really makes it to the mass market. Science fiction is always there, right, for nerdy people like me who just,
Mhm.
at some point decide, this is my life, that's what I'm going to do, I'm going to consume it, now I create it too. But this is what I want to hear about, this is what I want in my games, this is what I want in my life, as much as I possibly can squeeze it in. That is not necessarily, I know it's not mainstream, not
Mhm.
necessarily, this is not mainstream, but there have been huge commercial successes of mainstream science fiction.
Yeah.
And it's not like in the year 77, people said, oh, science fiction was dead, and then Star Wars came along. I really don't think it
I don't.
was
I
dead
think.
before.
I think
People,
science fiction is a bit more respected now than it was in 1977. Unless, I mean, in my opinion, I don't. I could be wrong on this, but just from what I've read, I know a lot of the science fiction writers at the time were kind of, even the big ones like Heinlein and Clark and Asimov. They weren't really like as respected until later, when like a lot of the stuff they were talking about started kind of coming to fruition a little bit. And they're like,
yeah.
oh,
No,
these guys were, oh wow, these guys are really, um, you know, these guys really foresaw a lot of things.
you think that the late 70s and the breakthrough success of mainstream sci-fi was kind of the that was the pivotal moment when it went from it's more pulp to it's actually serious literature. Do you see that as a tipping
I don't
point?
know, because I mean, like I think which I'll after I get over this, we can put a pin in it, because there's another question I think this conversation's a bit more appropriate. And but I mean, I think with stuff like Star Trek is a bit more like harder science, because it is more speculative. I think that with science fiction, speculation is a big thing. Um,
Right.
Now I'm not saying Star Wars isn't speculative. It definitely talks about a lot of things. Like prequels, as flawed as they are, I do think it really. I think there's a really good story in there about like how a democracy gets corrupted. And even
Yeah.
now, I think about it, I'm like, wow, like they were really. I mean, I'm not saying the prequels are great movies or anything, but I do think there was some genius there, and how like like there is some stuff being foreseen here. There's stuff that's being like, whoa, like this could happen, and one could
Yeah.
argue it is happening right now.
I 100% agree. The way
But
how
oh, sorry.
society fractures
Mm-hmm.
in the prequels, especially in episode 3, that is really brilliantly done. In episode 3, there is um, this collage of scenes when there's no dialogue for like 3 minutes, I
Uh huh.
believe, in a row, and you just see the different players at the different locations and how they all await big change and things to come, and everybody is very anxious because everybody feels it deep down. This is not a good change. Things are not going well. This is not a change for good, and it's the most dialogue free section of all Star Wars movies. And I
Yeah.
think this is really good stuff because you feel the shift from, yeah, we had the society they had before was not perfect,
Mm-hmm.
but for it was so much better than the things that were about to come. And yeah, so it tells that story really well. It has really cringy parts,
Yeah.
sadly. It's like episode 2 is the only Star Wars movie where there are parts where I actually skipped the chapter because I just can't stand it.
I
But it also has good stuff in it, so it's kind of a weird mixture.
And also, what's nice is the Clone Wars came out and kind of like tidied up a lot of stuff and had a lot
Yes.
of better dialogue. And we're like, okay, this is what he was going at. And you're like, oh, this is what they were doing. Okay, this makes a
Yeah.
lot more sense. So,
And those started out as kind of, story by story, mission by mission, very military sci-fi,
mhm, yeah.
if you will. And then the story arcs got bigger and the writing got bolder and it got
Mhm.
better and better, and it became a really, really good piece of Star Wars lore.
Oh yes, for sure. But I'll put a pin on that for right now, because again, I do think there's another question a little later down that I think is more appropriate for this kind of conversation. But I'll just go to the third question here. What are some of your favorite like tropes in science fiction? Like, what are things in like science fiction where you're like, ah, yes, like I specifically like this, or
Oh
from
my
what you
god.
sounds like, it sounds like you're just like you're down for the ride, no matter what's going on from our
There,
conversations.
there are many science fiction tropes I really like. So let me just sort them in my head. Pick a couple of top ones. I like everything. So when I say time travel, that
Mm,
doesn't capture it 100%. But some of my favorite let's say Star Trek episodes have time travel or time loops in it, where
Mm.
the crew goes through the same events multiple times, notices sudden changes, certain changes, small changes, reacts to them, and then tries again and tries again. So the perception of time, which is closely tied to perception of reality, which is a broad topic which fascinates me.
Mm-hmm.
If there's something in it that messes with time or our perception of it, I'm always on board. I 100% want to watch your movie, read your book, go through your
So, like,
comic, whatever it is.
would
Yeah.
you say you like Christopher Nolan stuff, because he talks a lot about
Yeah.
time in his stuff?
And he explores this more and more. I mean, even in the war movies, right? He always looks like Dunkirk. He has the time factor of whatever happens on the beach is told within a week. Whatever happens on the boat is told within a day, and what happens on the plane for the pilot is told within an hour. And then he has this overlap where these different time frames
Mm-hmm.
and the
Yeah.
different protagonists meet. So even in a war movie where you don't really have to mess with this, he's still messing with it.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
just fascinated with it. And then when he did Tenet, I think he worked his career up to a point where, hey, Christopher Nolan, you just make the movie any way you want. And then he made Tenet. And then you sat there and like, oh my
poor
God, I just
Tenet.
blinked. I missed a half sentence of dialogue. Now I'm lost. I have to rewind. And then you watch the whole thing and you're like, I didn't 100% get it. And then you have to watch it again. And but I like the as much criticism as the movie drew. I like the purity of concept. I think honestly, this is the movie he always wanted to make, and he went absolutely crazy with the concept of objects traveling backwards through time, and then their ability to mimic this, and the effects it had on simple stuff like breathing, where you can't really breathe in the time reversed universe and things like that. It's absolutely amazing.
I do
get the
think he
movie
could have
at all the
tampered
first
with
time I
it more,
watched
maybe
it.
made it a little more palatable, kind of like Inception, where like, there's a lot of, now I don't think Inception is my favorite of his concept movie. That's probably still The Prestige for me. I love that film.
Yes. I mean,
I think
always,
Prestige kind of gets lowballed a little bit.
yeah.
Which
I
I'm
don't
totally
know.
biased here because I love that movie to death, but I
Yeah.
like not enough people talk about that movie. I think it's
It
brilliant.
does not get as much, and I don't know if that was purely commercial, if just the rollout and marketing for Inception was so much. I'm not a like movie buff in the sense that I know a lot about around the movie, how it was made, or what the cultural impact was. Yeah, you might be right. There might be more people who were sold on the visuals of Inception and maybe also the concepts than for the Prestige. Yeah.
It's interesting you say that about time travel, though. Kind of coming back to time travel, because I kind of view time travel a little bit like a high grade explosive. Like you have to be kind of careful with it. If you mess with it, you'll
Yeah.
blow up. Now, that's not saying there aren't great time travel stories. I really like stuff like The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. Or I'm actually reading a time travel story right now, which is actually really well done. Like just the way they wrap everything together, and like how I really love in time travel stories. Like my favorite time travel thing is probably still 12 Monkeys, because I love the loop in that movie, and just like
Yes.
the haunting, just the existential dread from the end of that movie that guy realizes he basically watched his own death. Like that is just so, spoilers by the way, but like that is just, that'll Or you can just be like, I don't know if you ever watched Primer, but you know, the whole point of Primer is like time travel would be ridiculous.
Yeah.
The whole point
No,
is that it's convoluted
and
and
all these
ridiculous.
approaches are fine. You can take it very serious, or it can be very playful. It can lend itself almost to sci-fi combined with comedy. You can go any way, but you're absolutely right. You can also mess it up, especially if you use time travel in a larger franchise, in an existing building of as big as Star Trek, right? So
I
you
was
have,
gonna say Terminator. Look at
yeah.
you, Terminator.
I think with time travel, you have to make the determination as the creative, as the script writer, as the writer, to what is the scientific basis for time travel for you. Not so much that what's the machine, what's the mechanism, but what is the impact. Are you of is your book about, you can go back in time, for instance, to change your own timeline,
Hmm.
right? You do something, you kill someone, and then something that you perceive as negative is not going to happen. Is it that kind of story? Or is it the almost like in 12 Monkeys, it's a bit open-ended if their attempts are futile or not. Did they really succeed in the end or not? Or was their failure always part of human history? Were
Hmm.
the travelers that came back in time always part of our history? Because in the history lectures in the movie, you see them talking about it, about the strangers that showed up and they had weird technology. They told different stories about a terrible future, and sometimes they were burned at the stake or they were seen as prophets. And so the time travel is always part of your fabric, and then time travel doesn't really have an impact on your world like you have when you say, oh, we go back and change something. Or the time travel gets you into a different reality. It opens up new branches of a multiverse. And I say this a little because multiverse is also a loaded
I
loaded
love parallel
terminology.
universes, by the
But
way.
it
I just
opens
find
up
that
a new
fascinating.
version that you can mess around with.
That's
So
one of my tropes I'm a sucker for is parallel universes. I just think that's awesome. I really liked Fringe for that reason.
oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Great show. And it's and they were very effective how to when they
Also a
switched
really
back
good
and
time
forth.
travel episode in that show as well.
Yes.
Probably my
Oh,
favorite
yeah.
episode of the whole show.
Fringe could, what's as the name of the show implied, they could really go into all these esoteric, far out there places, and do that with the same crew, which is not easy to do, right? It's a
Hmm.
You have the same core crew, but you can dive into different science fiction tropes, some more standard and to be expected, others more surprising, and
Hmm.
they did all of this. So yeah, great show.
Yeah, but yeah, no, yeah, that's another great time travel story. Um, what was it called? The White Tulip, I think is what it was called. And like RoboCop plays the scientist. Anyway, um, I agree with you though. I really, I, I don't know. I tend to, what am I tend to be a bit wary with time travel because it can't get easily messed up because you're like, what? This
Yeah,
doesn't make sense. And even then, stuff like Terminator, you might think like that doesn't really make sense if you think about it for a moment. Um,
it's yeah, and
Even in
you're
the first
absolutely
two
right. You
movies, there's
have
some
to be
stuff you're like,
careful
huh?
with it.
Does that make sense?
Um, because you can, someone will become a fan of your stuff so much that they will sit down in earnest, think it through, start poking holes into it, and then if the time travel story is not solid, then it that can kind of destroy the magic, because you're like, well, this doesn't really make sense. Does science fiction always have to make sense? I don't know. Ideally, it does. I think the story should make sense. The
Yeah.
technology sometimes, let's say the time machine that's described, or the way how they time travel, maybe that doesn't make sense. Okay, I personally, as a consumer of science fiction, can live with that. But if the implications of time travel then don't make sense, that irks me.
Yeah, I think I mean I'm not like, I'm not like super anal about technology cuz I mean I'm not like a admittedly as much as I enjoy science fiction, I'm really bad at like technology and science as in general. But I mean I don't think you have to be like a scientist to appreciate science fiction, but I do
Well,
think it
I
can
hope
help.
not. If it's done right, you don't have to. No.
But it's not necessarily like it has to be glaring for me because I'm willing to kind of roll with things. I'm not but I wouldn't say time travel is one of my favorite science fiction tropes. So I think it can be done really well when used properly. Like some of the stuff I mentioned earlier, like 12 Monkeys. I mean, the first like Heinlein story where I was like, wow, this guy really is a genius was All You Zombies, which is yeah, yeah. I won't get into that. um, I really like AI, of course, because I think
Mhm.
it's we kind of talked about that before, but I'm really fascinated,
And
mainly
that, yeah.
if an AI can become a human being, or if an AI can feel and think like we can, because consciousness is a very unique thing to human beings. Though I guess you could say animals technically have consciousness, but like not like us, you know.
That is, it's also, I think the line there is blurring. We used to have the understanding that there is really us, and then there's the animals and in the tree of life below us, and I think that is also blurring in terms of what the science and closer looks give us there. Where I think there are life forms on the planet that come very close, that were, let's say, if all of us would vanish tomorrow and give the planet not a clean slate, give its entire ecosystem minus the humans, that the niche of of sapiens would be filled relatively quickly by
Mm-hmm.
evolution with someone else. So as long as we exist, that will not happen. I think that would actually make a good book too if we allowed it and thought about who else could be there.
That's actually
But
something I thought was really. I don't know. Did you watch the rebooted Planet of the Apes trilogy that Andy
yeah,
Serkis did? One of the things I thought was really fascinating about that is because I love the original Planet of the Apes movie and I have a soft spot for all the other old movies, but I really liked how they gave a I don't know if it's plausible, but a very interesting explanation on how these hyper intelligent apes, I almost said aliens, how these like hyper intelligent apes would work, you know,
yeah. No, I think it was
which also kind of plays into my fascination with consciousness. I guess it's consciousness I'm really fascinated in more than like AI in general, but I do like how they explored in AI when it's done well. Because
yeah.
I think
So
with
there
AI
is no
stories, like they're
consciousness
not
here.
necessarily about the AI; it's about the people.
Yeah. Yeah, and there again, the question is, is that a potential next step for us? Of course, this is another trope, right? Transhumanism. How can we upload consciousness into an artificial system, into a computer system as we understand it today, into a computer system as we might develop it into
Mm-hmm.
a future? Is this distinguishable or indistinguishable from the biological machine of the brain that we currently have? Is it as good? Is it better? Is there an ethical or moral difference between the two?
Mm-hmm.
Does it have an impact on the concept of a soul? So these are all really big questions. You can
Mm-hmm.
just, you have one can of worms and you open it and they all come out there. And um, all these can also make for really good storytelling, no doubt.
Yeah, like one of my favorite AI stories in like recent memory. It's a movie called Ex Machina from Alex Garland. Um, I really love how he approached AI in that film because he goes out of the way to go like, okay, the character Ava, who is the AI in this film, is not human.
Mhm.
It can act like a human, but it's not. It's operating on a completely different, set of morals or standards or whatever than us. So, like, is it necessarily a human, or is it just a machine that is growing into something else that might be more sinister, if you will?
Is that the movie where the main protagonist like sort of goes into the woods where there's this remote
Yeah.
institute?
Mm-hmm.
There's like the brilliant guy
Yeah.
who built. Yeah. Okay, then yeah, I was just like I had a couple of pictures in my mind, but I couldn't string them together. Okay, so
Yeah.
that is the movie. All right, yeah. So that's a good question. Um, is
It's
she a
kind of
form of human, or is she just her own thing? Is it a truly new creation?
which I wish science fiction did more. I wish they would do something more with that, which I'm sure it does. I just haven't read it yet, but I think kind of Blade Runner plays with that idea a little bit. um do androids also, the original novel Do Androids Dream of Electric, she plays with that idea, because I don't know if the androids are quite as complex, if you will, as in the movie, because in the book they're more like these very hedonistic, very straightforward. They're all about their desires. But like there is that hint though, I think, like with when they hang out with Isidore, that, there is something in there that is, I don't know if it's good, but could be, I don't know what the word is for it though.
Yeah, it's the science. You're absolutely right.
Philip
Lots
K.
of
Dick
science
always did it
fiction
differently from the
goes
others.
into the human experience, right?
Yeah.
And we value ourselves kind of high. We're very high on our own list of desirable achievements, and we include ourselves into this
Hmm.
list. And we're like, yeah, if we build something really cool, we want it to be like us. And then we ask the follow-up questions of, is that good? Should we do it or not? What can go wrong? And then many times, of course, things go wrong because drama makes for better storytelling. But if we sometimes we go into the more fringy question of, can we create that next step? Is it not just something that functions like us and has maybe more compute power and a little bit more memory or something like that? It's not a scale up. It's really a step up in quality from us. Not quality in good or bad in terms of ethics, but is it something else that we can create? And yep, sometimes science fiction goes there, and again, I think that's when it really shines.
Yeah, for sure. I'm always really fascinated with that question. And again, maybe there are like other books and other stuff out there that explores that concept, but I haven't seen it. At least not yet anyway. Usually
It is
when
more rare. Yep.
usually with AI, it's usually it turns on us, or we treat them bad, or something of that sort, you know.
Yeah, I think 90% is it turns on us, right?
Either
So
that or like, look how badly we're treating these things.
yeah,
Like,
that's
are
the other
we any
10%.
different,
Yeah, yeah, where
Um
the AI is, it reaches proper sentience, proper sapience, and then we basically enslave it.
yeah.
So it's usually, so one of us is the a-hole, right? It's either the
Yeah.
AI or it's
Yeah.
us. Usually, if someone is portrayed as the a-hole, I think that humans are always a good pick because
Yeah.
we have a lot of experience in that field. But the AI as the machine, the being replaced by a machine, I think is an old fear. It's
Mhm.
not a primal fear. We didn't really have that when we were gathering around the fire in a cave. So it's not that old, but I think it's at least as old as, let's say, maybe industrial revolution, where all of a sudden humans got kicked out of the factories and the steam engines were brought in, and
Mhm.
these tasks didn't
That sounds like a
require a
good. That
human
sounds like that could
anymore.
be a fun book, like a future industrial revolution. Maybe that's already been done. Any?
Oh, based on new technologies that are groundbreaking and making yet another large part of humanity no longer needed. Yeah,
I
absolutely.
guess that's already been kind of done. Like Star Trek kind of plays with that a little bit. But yeah, no. But yeah, no. It's interesting where we could. I think what's interesting about do androids dream of electric sheep, or Blade Runner, which kind of plays with that idea of, oh, look how bad we are. But I do think what's interesting is that kind of core theme of empathy, like with these Andes, as they call them in the book, or the
Right.
replicants. They have no choice in the matter. They're kind of just they're kind of programmed with this base selfishness. But Deckard, on the other hand, willingly shuts that part of himself off so he can
Yeah.
carry out his job. And I think that's a far more fascinating thing than just I know a lot of people like The Matrix, but I do think it is a little ham-fisted at points, going like, look how much jerks we were to the machines.
And now they're jerks
And there's
back to
yeah,
us.
yeah.
Yeah. So
I
not
do
not
think some
completely
science fiction.
unrealistic both ways.
I do think
But
it does get
yeah.
a little ham-fisted sometimes. Is all I'll say
Yeah.
about that.
Well, this kind of goes back to almost your first question, right? When you
Hmm.
asked what makes a great science fiction story, and we still talk about the Blade Runner today.
Hmm.
We collectively still think that that is a great movie, and why is that? Because it really tells a story that is both old and new, because it gives new perspectives on old questions. And so I put this in the appendix to my answer, what makes a great science fiction. That too makes a great science fiction story.
That's a good one. All right, moving on to the I get technically fourth and fifth questions here, but this is more of just like this has all been personal opinion, but anyway, I'll just get to it. Who are some of the greats of science fiction in your opinion, and who are some newer science fiction writers or voices? Because I know you also really like you said you like visuals as well. So if you want to add like
Right.
filmmakers or TV or anything, that's fine too. But what like are newer science fiction voices or writers that you've also found to be compelling?
Yeah, not mentioning George Lucas would be hypocritical, because his visuals got me into the genre.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
as a creator, he got me into what science fiction can be. There were a couple of other more visual components that fed into this, like the original Battlestar Galactica from
Mm.
'78, right? So, sort of riding the Star Wars wave. The Cylons, also, a machine antagonist. That all visually still dominates how I see my own scenes unfolding. I don't write fan fiction. I don't write for these universes, but the like the way how sort of the virtual camera in my head moves through a scene, that is
Mm-hmm.
still grounded in what I've seen and fell in love with there. Then I read many of what you would consider classics today. So I consumed huge amounts of Asimov, and I really also think that Frank Herbert's Dune
Mm-hmm.
gave me a lot of. This was the first book I read that had a glossary. I had some sort of
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, extended version of it. I don't know. It got gifted to me, and I up until then never heard of the author. So I just, oh, it's science fiction, great. And then I was, oh wow, this is quite complex. I really have to check in. What's that again? Oh, who's the Bene Gesserit order again? Oh my
Yeah,
god,
I
this is
find Dune is such a frustrating book for me because like the thematic depth is so good, like there's a lot of really
yeah,
great stuff discussed about like religion and mythology and political systems, how good intentions can be twisted into something horrible, which that story of time right there. But anyway,
right.
um but I just couldn't mesh with the characters. I did think that Herbert over explained a little bit,
Oh yeah, yeah. The book
in my
is
opinion,
not,
anyway.
and Asimov books are not perfect either. And some of it, if you go back to them today with a, gosh, I'm not 13 anymore kind of lens, and some of the stuff holds up, some of it does not. What the impact on me was how the book made me feel, I think. And
Aha.
that's
Okay. Yeah.
ultimately whenever you consume something, right? As they
Mm-hmm.
say, the first thing you forget is what was said. The second thing you forget is how was it said, and then the thing you might remember is how it made you feel. That might be your long term, that goes into your long term memory. So
Mm-hmm.
the sense of wonder, the like the epic scale of it all, and there's a lot of minutia in Dune, but the scale is truly epic, and
Mm-hmm.
the fitting together this, like the economy, the
Mm-hmm.
religion, the idea of that space travel and the monopoly of it is really the biggest power in the universe, and it's only rivaled by the spice trade. So there, these, it's not like empire, alien empire
Yeah.
fight human empire. It's economic interests fight technological monopoly. And to me, this was all new. I never read anything like it. So
Oh yeah. That. Yeah. I get
these
that.
ideas I liked.
It's I also find it interesting that in Dune anyway, like all of it is about human beings. Like I don't know if aliens exist in Dune because I haven't really moved past the first book. I read the first book. I'm like, yeah, okay, cool, and then haven't read much of them since. So I do
So
know some
you
people.
knew what it was about,
Though
and
I
because
do
it
know
always
that I
comes
do
up.
know what
Yeah,
happens in later books though, because like I've heard that
yeah.
like Paul like commits genocide basically.
It's it yeah, from it gets a little bit off the rails,
Though I
if you
guess
will.
though I
So
guess worms are technically aliens. The sandworms.
well, yeah, they're an alien life form, and they're very clever. They're fully sapient. I don't know if they ever. It's been a while since I read this, so
Oh,
we're
okay, yeah.
still at my foundations, right? So this is not stuff I read recently. This is what I read a long time ago.
Hmm.
I think and then I read a lot of stuff that I liked, but what else would have shaped me? I think the next thing really in more in modern times, um, I liked Andy Weir's books,
Mm,
but still like Andy
hmm.
Weir's books a lot, because these are different from Asimov or Herbert. These explore very much in like technical detail. He does a lot of things that were deemed forbidden, right? The way
Hmm.
how he handles dialogue was like, nah, you can't really do this. Or he goes on these longer rants about why would a component in the Mars habitat fail, and he goes into the nitty gritty detail of a little fabrication error in something that was done months or years before, and how it builds up and then it finally pops, and that causes the explosion.
Hmm.
And of course, this is something that the movie, which I also like on its own merit, cannot convey. This is where the written word, of course, has the huge advantage, because you can go into this. And I'm pretty sure there was an editor who, had it all redlined as super exposition. You can't do all of that, but it still made it into the final novel. And
Yeah.
so he broke a lot of rules writing
The
that
the
book.
thing the thing I appreciate about like an Andy Weir and is that he kind of brings that kind of classic sci-fi back, but he does it in a very like approachable way. I
He
think.
does. It's an interesting mixture of super nerdy engineering tech stuff and sometimes hilarious dialogue.
Hmm.
Some of the passages are really really funny, and it's
Mm-hmm.
still sometimes when books go into comedy, then there's, like with time travel, it is a dangerous device, right? It can take away from the, oh, should we still take the story serious or not? But it balances it beautifully. It still takes itself serious. It tells a serious story about serious problems and how they're
Mm-hmm.
being overcome, but it's still funny as heck.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
What was I talking about? Oh yes, Andy Weir. So yeah, we were talking about Andy Weir.
Right.
Um, I've not read Project Hail Mary yet, though I do hear a lot of people really like that. And very recently, trailer for the movie just came out not too long ago.
Right.
Um, I heard it was a bit like it was kind of in that vein of The Martian. I really liked The Martian. I thought it was a really good book, and I liked the movie as well. Um, I don't know if I'd say that. I don't know if I'd say that Andy Weir is like I would consider like the best one still working today. I would probably give that to like Jeff Vandermeer in my opinion anyway. I just really like his unique vision. But
Yeah.
I do really appreciate Weir. I do think he has I do think he is one of the better science fiction writers who's come out in recent years. I really like, again, kind of what we were talking about, how he talks about these very it could be very heady, and if someone else did it, but he does it in a very approachable manner, I think.
Yeah, he does, and I think that's also an art to be so.
He'd be a great science teacher.
Yes,
I think.
exactly, and he kind of is through his books. I think there are people who look up a lot of things and or marvel at, oh, this is how it really works. So this is the real difficulty with space travel or going to a different world. Going to Mars is anything but trivial, and sometimes, and I might be part of the science fiction writing community that sometimes trivializes space travel or certain aspects of it because I have a really large canvas, right?
Mm-hmm.
I write for the galaxy or the local group off. So
Mm-hmm.
the space I cover is big. So space travel
Mm-hmm.
has to be easy, almost trivial to my characters.
Yeah, I mean that's
Of course,
fine. I'm not,
I know it's not. Yeah, it depends on what kind of story you tell. But if
Mhm.
you go into what could we expect from going to Mars and what's tough about it, I think his prose it describes it really well in a lot of detail, more detail than other authors might get away with, because he somehow found a formula to explain it in a way that's entertaining and still riveting. So I admire him very much for the ability to do that.
Yeah, I think like you said that is definitely a talent, for sure. I mean, I generally like the weirder science fiction writers, like Philip K. Dick. I don't know if Ray Bradbury's that weird, but I really I love Ray Bradbury a lot.
Yep.
If we're going back to science fiction tropes, I really like space colonies for whatever reason.
Mhm.
Which don't you write about space colonies?
I have, well, implicitly, I have about one third of the Milky Way colonized by humans.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, there are lots of space colonies. There are very few space habitats, although I personally think there is a future in space habitats, but there is an in book reason why humans don't do that anymore. It's a bit of a spoiler. So, but
Mm-hmm.
they don't do it, but they do have space colonies, and they typically go for lower hanging fruit of planets that they don't have to terraform. So they would have the technology to terraform, but if there is a planet that's already made for them, for humans, that take
Mm-hmm.
very little effort to adapt to, then they would go for that. And they've found enough of them in the Milky Way to really spread out.
I,
So
I
yeah,
also I also like Douglas Adams. It's kind of weird. He's kind of in a weird spot because I don't like his
yes,
science fiction is very soft. It's very like absurd, but I really like Hitchhiker's Guide a lot. I think it's a lot of
oh
fun.
yeah. And he's hard to put in a class, and
Yeah.
he's almost always mentioned as like a class of his own, which I think is a great
He's very much in that
achievement.
like Doctor Who kind of, which I think he actually wrote for original Doctor Who, if I recall correctly. But
As a franchise, that's probably the one that comes closest. Yeah,
I think
you're
it's kind of in
right.
that Doctor Who where it's like very, very soft. Like, as long as you don't think too hard about it, like you'll have fun
Yeah,
with it. Very pulpy, I think,
yeah.
in a sense.
But it admits that, right?
Yeah.
It never sets out to be too serious or taking itself too
Hmm.
serious, and then I think everything's permissible. Then you can get away with it. If you take yourself and the story and how it should be perceived very serious, then yeah, you have a couple more restrictions of what you can or
Like,
should not do. But
like
yeah,
you can just blow up the Earth in the first
yes,
page, which is not a
absolutely, yeah,
spoiler, by the way. That's literally what happens in like the first couple chapters of the
yeah.
original Hitchhikers.
Oh yeah, they get to that very quickly, and then the way how they manufacture the reasons about it, which seems very familiar, right? So
Hmm.
it's the way how the hyperspace lane is being built. It's like, yeah, this is how the freeway near our house was built back in
Yeah,
the
pretty
day.
much. Yeah.
Yeah,
It was like they're my planet. Yeah, no. I really enjoy Hitchhiker's Guide. Yeah, there's probably some others I could think of. I've quite enjoyed Jonathan Lethem's stuff that he's done in science fiction. Though I've only read Gun with Occasional Music, which I enjoyed a lot. Which is also kind of full circle here. Very much a crime book set in the
yeah.
future.
Oh yeah, when you mentioned
Also a
the
bit absurd
Bohmer
as well
stories
because
earlier, I was like, yeah, there is a quite the crime element in it. I mean, ultimately, some of the stories are about traveling around and
also a bit of
solving.
a absurd element in there too,
Yeah,
because like you can't ask questions because that's like illegal or something. Even though he's a detective, that's part of his job. And there's like babies that are like gangsters. You're like, what? It's very strange book. Um, but or Brave New World. I really like that book a lot.
mhm.
It's yeah, man. I mean, 1984 is great too. I mean, I actually posit, and this might be a bit of an unpopular opinion, but I actually think Brave New World is a far scarier dystopia than 1984. I don't know what you think about that. I mean,
Yeah. It's. I think they take different aspects of how it affects human life and focus on that. I'm not sure if I can rate them one scarier than I think they're both scary as heck. So
that's fair.
not sure if I can pick a favorite there, to be honest.
That's fair. Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna, I won't, I'm not trying to like make you choose or anything. It's just kind of that's where I've landed
No, no,
on.
that makes sense. Yeah.
Um, I don't know. I mean, I do think 1984 is like a bit more in your face, which is fine. It's not a particularly subtle book. Like this is terrible.
Yeah, it's no,
But
it's not subtle at all. It doesn't really hide anything. It doesn't weave it in underlying a kind of easy to read adventure. No, they're like, this is all terrible, and this is how terrible it is, and then it gets worse. Yeah,
but I think that it's
not trying to
more
hide it.
insidious in Brave New World, and that like they've basically gotten people so focused on like hedonism, they just are completely oblivious to what they have lost, basically.
So you're saying that what's more terrifying for you is that the it's really hidden. Nobody in 1984 is very obvious.
Yeah,
Well, it's not to everyone, but at least it's very obvious to like the protagonist
that's true. Yeah.
what's bad and what's not.
And also, the
And
government in 1984, regularly gaslights the citizens. So
yeah,
it's not but yeah, it's but it's just that's just my opinion. I don't know. I mean, there's others I could probably mention, but um, I don't know if you've read Pluto, but I thought that was a really interesting take on AI as well. But anyway, that was beyond that was a bit non sequitur. Sorry. What were we on? Oh
no,
yes.
that's all right. AI, of course, is a big topic right now because there's more public opinion on it that's not longer being exclusively formed by sort of the science fiction writing community. Up until a couple of years ago, if you had an opinion about AI, either you were in the field, which many people are not, or you read about it and then it was like, oh yeah, I've watched Terminator. The intelligent toaster doesn't get into my house. So these were usually the opinions people had. And as you said, most of the AI related stuff was like, it's bad, or we're the a-holes and we treat it bad.
Yeah.
Now people have more opinions about it. More is more informed the right word? Maybe to some extent, because they use it at work, or have to use it at work, or try to use it for work. They use it for certain, well, they have access to it that before they did not. Of course, the AI flag is like time travel, very dangerous to use loosely, right? And it's not, you always say, oh, technically this is not AI, but yeah, it's AI enough. It's within the realm of AI, and now everybody has a strong opinion about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually funny. I've decided one of my goals for 2026 is to catch up on science fiction, because I've been kind of out of the game for a little bit. I was asking a mutual friend of ours, Olivia Elliott. I'm like, did you read The Star's My Destination at all? She's like, yeah, I read it a few months ago, and I was like, dang it, I was thinking maybe we could buddy read it or something. So I'm thinking about reading it next year. But yeah, I can't think of any other science fiction writers. I mean, I could say like Christopher Nolan, of course, or George Lucas. Again, a lot of people are kind of arguing if Star Wars is indeed science fiction, but it doesn't really matter. I have a soft spot for Harlan Ellison. I know his cantankerous personality can turn off some. But I do think I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream is one of the, like... It's up there with, like, 1984. Like, holy crap, this is scary. Like, I know I said earlier, like, sometimes I think with AI and science fiction, it can be a little ham-fisted. Like, oh, the inhumanity, or, like, oh, this is bad, but, like, I think it actually works in that story, because, like, the AI in that is so bad. Like, it's so mean,
Yeah. No, there's still there quite a few good takes on it in terms of there's, I'm trying to remember the author, but the author's name, but the story was basically post-human. So there are several generations of artificial life forms that now inhabit the earth, and they know about humans. The oldest of them have seen the last human die in like a zoo-like exhibition, and even they have they make progress, and they look back on the older models, and it's all written from the perspective of a machine, but with some of course, and we can't do this otherwise as human writers, with some human insights. And so that was an interesting take, because in that book everybody is AI, and then there's some AIs that feel like we're actually morally much better AIs, and then there are a-hole AIs within the AI realm.
Shodan comes to my mind.
Yeah, how they battle this up.
You know what? So I think I actually do like evil AI, if it's done really well. I think Shodan's really interesting as an evil AI. Not quite as, like, vicious as, like, Am. Is it described as Am? I don't remember.
Yeah.
But, yeah, no. I enjoy that stuff. But
it's... Sometimes it can be interesting if like the evil part is just it starts benign, right? So the AI is furnished with a rule set of what we feel like this is good, solid moral foundation, and then the AI doesn't really have our limitations, and then takes that to the max, right? It's like it thinks the moral code all the way to the end, and then you realize, oh, many things, many many things that we prescribe as, well, this is good behavior and everybody should be like that all the time. If you really crank that up to 11, it actually turns into something terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And then the AI does that. So does it make the AI bad, or does it make our foresight, too short? Who's the baddie there?
Mm-hmm.
And so these are interesting stories where you take the sort of the opportunity of storytelling, where you look at what are we doing, what do we define as good or bad, and then have some mechanism like an AI take it all the way to an extreme, and then you re-examine, oh, if we make this a rule and if we would really all follow it, it could actually be quite terrible. These are also interesting observations. So I like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I guess that leads me to my next couple questions here, which, I'll take the pen out of what we were talking about with Star Wars earlier here now. So, but do you have any worries about where the science fiction genre is headed, or are there any gripes that you have with the genre that you would like to see improved? Like, are there trends that kind of bug you? Because that's actually kind of what inspired me to start this show. Because I've kind of felt in a weird way that science fiction's kind of in a weird spot right now, because, like I said earlier, the future is kind of here now.
Right.
But I'd like to let you answer it before I kind of go into my diatribes about science fiction. Well, more of my worries about science fiction before I diatribe about that.
Yeah, I think so. Is science fiction in a weird spot? You said. Let's start with that. And the question is it really, or is that part of the perception, right? So the way how, let's say, from a mainstream audience who look at science fiction, of course, is also tied to commercial successes or failures, right? So in the 60s, early 70s, it was supposed to be dead, and then Star Wars supposedly reactivated it and brought it back. I think but these were the same in the people in 77 were not different from the people in 76. So what made the difference, right? It's not like the zeitgeist had completely changed and all of a sudden it was ready for this. It was a new story. It was old stories redone in a new story, presented in a new way. And this is still happening today. There's so many. There's probably has never been more with like the publishing industry very much being democratized in certain ways, not in all ways.
Well, yeah, I do think some of my gripes that I've had with science fiction, kind of where I think it's going, I do think a lot of it could just be my gripes with publishing in general. So, I have acknowledged that.
It might actually be the perception of what is the stuff that actually makes it into the mainstream. What are the ads I'm getting? What is it that I feel like, yeah, this is what's out there? What are the movies that are being made out of? And did I like any of the recent sci-fi movies? And then you start thinking back, oh, it's been a while that I really loved a big production. It's really been a while. And then, of course, if you reach my age point, then you honestly have to ask yourself, maybe I'm over the nostalgia threshold, and I'm just the old guy who's like, if it was not done, it's not done like in my days, and therefore I resent it. That's a possibility. You have to be open.
That's definite, yeah.
Fortunately, you're not there yet, so maybe you're more objective there. I always have to ask myself, so this new movie I just watched, or the new book I read, don't I just like it because I'm old and I just like stuff how it was done, or is it legitimately bad and I have a good reason to hate it? So I have to factor that in. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff that comes out, and I actually hate being media negative, so I don't mention names, but there's a lot of new stuff that's genuinely terrible, and it's terrible because it does not really bring what science fiction fans really want, which is the discovery, the new ideas. Instead, there's a rehash of old ideas that used to be great. but they're not anymore, or they were in the prime and now they're being rehashed and redone and reimagined over and over. But we don't want to reimagine. We just want to imagine. We want something fresh, and
Yeah.
the base work of fresh new stuff is enormous. It has never been broader than it is right now. But what bubbles up to what you see in the mainstream or even just below the mainstream, it is many times not very fulfilling.
Yeah, that's a good point you make. I mean, I don't know if I'm objective either, but you do make a good point of the kind of the generation discrepancy, if you will. I mean, I guess more of mine, like I said, I do think a lot of it is like publishing, because I could say that I do think like science fiction and fantasy kind of like they don't really make a distinction. But then again, that's not really an issue, because science fiction and fantasy have always been blurring. That's not a new thing.
Yeah.
But
There has always been terrible science fiction at all
that's
times.
true. Yes.
If you go back, not because the story is from the golden age of science fiction, it doesn't mean
That's
it's
true.
It's good. You like 99% of the golden age stories are actually really pulpy and really crappy, and they haven't aged well at all. It's just that the golden age makes it that the stuff that survives is actually timeless classic, really brilliant stuff. Brilliant then, brilliant today.
What was it that Sturgeon said? And I generally don't like this concept, because it's just like, why read? Why consume anything if this is true? But he once said that like 95% of everything is crap, and like the other 5% is like the true masterpieces. Like I get what he's getting at, but like I don't like that idea, because it's like, well, what's the point
maybe
of reading?
I revised my numbers, but you know what I mean. The overwhelming majority of well, today we would say content produced at any time is not good. It really is not. Sometimes you find something, a new find of really old literature, and it's like some Roman literature, and it's really just smut. It's really just a terrible story. And the fact that it's really old and it's in Latin and someone wrote this 2,000 years ago, it's still a terrible story. And so it's not like just because it's old, it's an insta classic and it's all great just because the older it is, the greater it is.
Yeah,
I think quite the opposite.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I see something like Sun Eater, which, like, no disrespect to Sun Eater, I haven't read Sun Eater, I don't know any. I mean, I do know a little bit about it from what my friends have told me, but like I haven't read it, so I have no like dog in the fight. But like, there's almost a sense like it's being kind of, and maybe again it's kind of gripes with publishing and like marketing or whatever, but it's almost like a weird it's almost indistinguishable from how like fantasy books are depicted, in a sense, even though this Sun Eater is more science fiction as general concept, which I guess you could kind of say you could kind of blame Star Wars for that in a weird way. I know Harlan Ellison rather infamously ripped on it because for reasons, but I mean, I don't know. It's kind of like, I mean, I don't know if like, because there was a while back on YouTube, people were asking if epic fantasy was dead. I guess it was more with this. I'm wondering, is science fiction dead? Like that's the real stirring question here.
Yeah,
I don't think so, but it's
to someone who's a creator in the field. That's even the pure question is more scary than 1984. So I would say no. Let's settle on no. It's not dead.
I don't think it's dead. But again, I think it's in a weird spot at the moment. Like,
is it in a weird spot?
Or at least I think it is. I don't know what you think.
You're perceived as weird. Yeah, no, I don't disagree with your assessment. But I'm trying to peel back the layers to say that I think that the underlying community of people who write science fiction and have brand new ideas is probably broader than ever. And since we have reached that future, we're in the future now.
Or we're starting to get into the future.
Yeah, we're in many ways we're in it. I mean, I've worked until I started writing full time in a high tech branch of industry, and the so I witnessed the advances that industry
Mm-hmm.
made from the year 2000 to, let's say, 2020, and
Mm-hmm.
that's just 20 years. And so, like, devices I've seen in 2020, they would have been um, called, this is science fiction, this is fantasy, we will never have that, just 20 years prior, by industry insiders. So it was
Mm-hmm.
that we will never reach that. This is absolutely impossible. 20 years later, you could buy these things. And so I've seen things going from science fiction to science to fact to commercial product in, just a fraction of my lifetime. So
Mm-hmm.
it can be done. Then there are other things that stagnate, right? Um, so one of the first planes I ever flew commercial on, when I was a little toddler, I was on a Boeing 747, the
Mm-hmm.
big jumbo jet, brand new back then. And the first plane that I took my kids on, it was also a 747. So
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't the same 747. Hopefully it wasn't, but it was the same conceptual plane, the same model, the same
Mm-hmm.
layout. So in certain ways we stagnate, right? Or we had the Concorde, supersonic travel. We had that
Mm-hmm.
commercially. Now we don't have it anymore. We even, take a step back or two sometimes. But in general, we should not underestimate how the science underneath us is really, like, quantum computing is
Mm-hmm.
making, and I'm a computer scientist, and
Yeah.
I'm struggling with the concept, and some of the progress that's being made is blowing my mind
Mm-hmm.
almost on a weekly basis. So there is a lot of science fiction stuff happening right now where, like, this can't be, we didn't really do this, or did we? So I think that science fiction as a entertainment genre is almost ready for its science fiction 2.0 step, where, like, the underlying development of futuristic stuff is so broad and so vast, and some move ahead so fast that I think you can go really wild with
Mm-hmm.
certain concepts and take them to
Mm-hmm.
the next step. So the scientific foundation is there. The science is fortunately not dead. Certain aspects are falling behind our expectations. The flying cars never happen, and we hold a grudge eternally for that. But other things you can pick up on and go wild with. So the opportunity is there. Is the mainstream commercial appreciation there? 100% with you. It's not where it should be.
Well, sure. Yeah. And I again kind of taking a pin off the Star Wars conversation. It's like I don't really know if Star Wars is that speculative, like we were saying earlier, but I do think there are like speculative. Like I think of Star Wars more as a archetypal fantasy in a science fiction setting, but I do think there are speculative elements though, like like with the prequels and Clone Wars talking about like how democracy gets subverted.
Yeah, it's ultimately, and that's interesting, right? Because it has a
Mm-hmm.
lot of high tech, and it has
Yeah.
enormous starships and artificial space stations and artificial life forms and more aliens than you've ever seen in anything else before.
Uh huh.
But it still tells a political story, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's still, and of course, Endor really went
Well,
the
yeah.
next step there, where it went hardcore after these themes
Mm-hmm.
with the
Yeah.
gloves coming off. But Star Wars, in many ways, can be seen as such a story. So, if you look at when you compare Star Wars to Star Trek,
Mm-hmm.
and you look at how many future engineers got um, like took the inspiration from Trek versus Star Wars, you will
Mm-hmm.
find very few that would say, I saw this in Star Wars and then I became an engineer and then I built the mobile phone, which they did after they watched the communicators, so that the flip phone prototype in Star Trek. So I think that's also a difference. So yeah, I think your observation is correct. Would
Mm-hmm.
I completely take Star Wars out of the science fiction realm, as some
Uh-huh.
people suggest? I think that's a little bit, that's going too far.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like I don't want to say Star Trek's like hard science fiction because like it's not like not really, but like it is definitely more like of the science fictional, you know. I
They
don't know.
try to come up with explanations for
Yeah,
everything.
exactly.
And
Yeah,
you have the infamous techno babble, right? When
yeah.
they talk about the phase converters and all these things, but they do take a stab and it, you know, especially with the older shows, it can be comical, but it wasn't at the time. But they're trying, right? They're like, oh, we have this thing, and then we show the engineer who's trying to fix it
Uh huh.
because some alien shot it up, and we're really going through the, oh,
Hmm.
give me the hydro spanner, give
Like
me
there's a lot
this,
more
give me
like
that.
problem solving in I mean there is not that there isn't in Star Wars, but like there's more like problem solving in like Star Trek, you know.
Yes, that it's closer to the technology where they have something to overcome, and then they reconfigure a key system of the ship to achieve that goal. And they work on it for like half the episode, and then the captain is always pushing the engineers to the limit, which is super. This is probably why engineers liked it so much. They were watching it and like, this is exactly like my bastard boss is. Made them
uh
relate.
yeah, no, it's yeah, no. Yeah, it's I don't know. And it's also it feels closer to us cuz it talks a lot about Earth culture in that
Yes.
series. Well, Star Wars not so much.
No, not at all. Earth is not mentioned at all, not even in mythology. And Star Trek is like the Federation is like this logical, as Roddenberry um, foresaw it in his sort of utopian version. It's like, yeah, this is what we did, this is what we did wrong, this is how we learned from it, and this is a new society that we built on top of it.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good point to make. So my second to last question here, and I mean, like I said, I know you said you like visual stuff as much as books, but are there any science fiction novels or other things that you would like to try in the future?
So I have started Adrian Tchaikovsky's Children of Time,
Mm.
which I believe is his very first commercial step at a novel. I'm not sure if he's written other things before, but I think that is his first novel. In this one, there is a very interesting spin on how ecosystems can work. There's a
Hmm.
lot of
Heard there's
um,
psychic spiders in Children of
yeah, there,
Time.
there there are the spiders who eat up that nanovirus that was originally designed for a different species. They wanted to, or you know, one crazy scientist wanted to create this kind of monkey-based utopia for various reasons. Don't want to spoil it too much. This is very early in the book. If you read the first 10 pages, it's in that. So
Hmm.
I'm not spoiling the ending here, just spoiling the very beginning. And and this nanovirus makes it down to a planet and it infects spiders. And it's a very what I like is it assumes the viewpoint of my favorite chapter is where a very simple spider is on the hunt and it has been infected by the nanovirus, of course, completely oblivious to the fact. And then how it's described, how the behavior of its hunting is changed, and how
Hmm.
it has these breakthrough thoughts about, "Oh, this is how I can do it. If I hunt like this, I'll never be hungry again."
Hmm.
And I think this is really well done. And then the book goes on explaining the spiders, and they're humans in it too. So
Yeah,
don't worry if you don't like spiders. It's not only about spiders, but
I've
it
heard
comes
it's
back.
about humans as well, but I know a lot of people are like there's psychic spiders in this book.
Yeah, and there are other there are other insect species that are their computers built from ant colonies. So
Oh my god,
ants
the
as a
spiders make
life
their own
form.
computers?
Yeah, they use them as part of their technology.
Oh,
So it is really
I
it
gotta
has
pick
a
this
couple
up.
of really interesting spins. And there are books that follow this as sequels. So
Hmm.
this is my next step. These sequels I'm gonna read because I was fascinated by Tchaikovsky's ecosystem and how he created it. And
Mm.
I've never read anything quite like it. So there's always this, and this aha moment when you read something and you're like, this is really new, this is fresh, I haven't read this like 16
You're
times.
like,
And
oh man,
this is
yeah.
this is a new take. So that's what Children of Time gave me, and I want more of that. So these are my next steps for reading.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have some places to go. There's some other authors I'd like to try, like, Alfred Bester, of course, and Samuel Delaney, and there's a lot of people I could mention because I also need to watch Battlestar Galactica because a lot of my friends really like Battlestar Galactica, the newer one more than the old one. I don't.
The 2004 one,
Yeah,
yeah.
I've heard it's written by the same dude who did Deep Space Nine, so I'm like, it should be good. I should enjoy it.
I think you will. I like both. I like
Hmm.
the classic one, and again, do I like it for the nostalgia or not? I recently, actually, not recently. I'm currently rewatching it with our younger teen, and surprisingly, she got into it. Really likes it. The really old stuff, the '78 stuff, and some of it might not have aged well, but like some of the concepts and some of the episodes, they're still very solid. And of course, it's like a weird show in the sense it had only, it's like Firefly, right? It had only the one season, it had only this run, and then it got canceled. And believe it or not, it still has a fandom today. I'm actually I have a segment on a Battlestar Galactica fan channel. So every month I talk for 15 minutes. I pick an old episode and talk about some of the themes and the tropes being used and the mythology that they dove into back in the days. But I do like both. I do like 2004. It had the shaky cam on space battles. The space battles were very kinetic, very believable. So it that was a fresh take on old material, which it's rarely done that well.
I Tchaikovsky's another one I would like to try at some point. My friend Livia is really trying to get me to read T.R. Napper, who's like an Australian science fiction writer. She really liked one of his books, and she even met him, so that was pretty cool.
Oh,
Um,
very nice. Yep.
um,
Sometimes that can nudge you towards, yeah, talk to the guy, talk to the girl, and it's like, yeah, I'll have
I
to
would like to
read
read
more
your
about it.
books as well at some point. I want to try
That would be great. Fantastic.
some more indie science fiction. There's one I can't remember the name, but it's basically about this AI who they think is possessed by a demon. If someone's gotten this far, if you let me know what that book is. I forget the name of it, but it's kind of blown up on BookTube a little bit. I'm forgetting the name though at the moment. But I'm like, that sounds really cool. Even though I'm creeped out by demon possession stuff, because
But hey, that's
when you're
a
raised a
big
Christian, you get
emotion.
spooked out by that
That's
stuff.
a great thing to get into as a storytelling device. And this also, it has the prerequisite that this AI is so human-like that it must have a soul-like entity that's worthwhile for a demon to possess.
Yeah.
So that's yeah, sounds interesting. When you find it, send me a link. I'd be interested as
I'll
well.
do that. I'll do that. But yeah, no, if anyone knows what I'm talking about and remember the name, let me know in the comments. I'm sure I have it on my Goodreads, but there's a lot of other stuff, and even when like comics get thrown in, like, oh God, forget it.
Yeah, that opens up a whole nother
Another bag of worms.
sub-universe of potential entertainment. Absolutely.
Yeah. That's but yeah, there's a lot. Kim Stanley Robinson. I actually want to try because again, I'm kind of a sucker for colonization stories. Love the Martian Chronicles. I really want to read his Mars trilogy. I read like a line or two from it. I'm like, wow, that's really evocative. I gotta read this Red Mars book as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Whenever that'll be, because that's
Yeah, these are good. And yeah, if you like the aspect of colonization, all the challenges, this is a good trilogy. Yep. Absolutely.
yeah. I'm sure there's others I could mention, but yeah, I'll just stop there before I drive myself crazy. But my last question, that I'll ask is, what is a science fiction book or other thing in general that you think people should consume before they die? It can be one or several.
That they should consume before they die. Wow. To narrow it down to a single one.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you don't have. You don't have to do a one if you don't want to. There's a couple. You can mention a couple.
Yeah, that's really hard.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. What did you say?
You had a great progression in your questions from some easier to talk about for me to like the really hard one that trips me up at the very end. Nicely done, nicely done. To have a single one, you should read. Well, I mean, I mentioned the ones that had an impact on me, but can I presume they would have an impact on someone else? I think Arthur C. Clarke's stuff might translate really well from back in the days to being reread today and still get across a really solid, high quality vision. And it also allows you the comparison of what was predicted, right, for 2001, which now has passed for a long time. 2010, the next one, 61, we haven't quite reached yet, but it allows for this comparison in someone who maybe hasn't really read anything else in sci-fi. It would show them the potential of it, and ideally get into reading more than one book before they die. So let's settle on Arthur C. Clarke. Let's settle on a 2001.
All right, yeah. I'm only familiar with the movie, though. Olivia gets after me to read the books because she's like, "Oh, it goes into more detail." And I'm like, okay.
Even more, yeah. Not like the movie is sparing you detail.
Yeah, no. It's just like
quite epic.
I'm
view,
like but like the movie is like so like sublime, Like I don't know if the book can reach that, Anyway,
it's really there. You have the two different art forms that do different things, and it's hard to have unseen the movie when you read the book next. That's virtually impossible. So but I think that's still a solid go-to book, as a read that one if you want to try one. I'll final answer 2001.
all right. But yeah, that's it. Yeah, but thanks, Bert, for coming on again. I had a lot of fun talking about science fiction.
Yeah, same here. Thanks for having me. Very much appreciate it.
But yeah, no, that's about it. Yeah, that's a good answer. I like that. I always fumble with this one as well. That's why I ask other people as well, because I'm like, I'm not alone. What would mine be? I don't know.
Yeah, it's easier to ask what are your top 100. It's probably easier than your top one. Yes.
If I had like a top 5, it'd be like Martian Chronicles, Scanner Darkly, Childhood's End, Hitchhiker's Guide, even though, like we were talking about earlier.
But hey, no problem having it in the top 5. No argument.
Moon is a harsh mistress. I don't know. I'll go with that one.
Okay.
Speaking of tropes, I like political strife, like revolutions. So yeah, I was eating up Andor. Better believe I was eating up Andor.
Yeah, Endor was it really it gave us the hope for the franchise, the
Yeah.
hope they talked about in it often, and I was like, yeah, it gives me more hope for the Star Wars franchise, which I was a little bit disenchanted with for a while, and I would have considered myself a lifelong fan, so I really struggled with where it was going. But yeah, Endor, especially season 2, man, it's really good.
But yeah, that's about it actually. But as I like to do before the end of these things. But thank you for coming on the State of Science Fiction again.
Thanks for having me.
But as I like to do before the end of these, if you have social media, feel free to share.
All right. Well, if you have time for 2 books before you die, and after you're done with 2001, as I said, I got this for you. I picked Galacticide. It's the 3rd in the trilogy, but the book series is called Galacticide, and every link that Britton just asked me for, you find it at galacticide.com.
All right. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate this. It's always fun. I'm glad we made it to 10 episodes. I was kind of nervous with State of Science Fiction. That reminds me, I need to get back to my fantasy show I've been doing. But anyway. But seriously, though, Bert, thank you very much. And hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. I definitely enjoyed recording this. So, yeah. Until next time, everyone.